It's August 5th here in Korea. You're watching ARIRANG News. I'm Na Young-kyung, and these are the stories that we are following at this hour. Now, President Park Geun-hye speaks out about a recent army bullying scandal that led to the death of a 23-year-old private and says it's something that should never happen again. The death toll in West Africa's Ebola outbreak is nearing 900, but an experimental drug might have saved the lives of 2 U.S. Americans infected with the virus. And this time, the deal was proposed by Egypt. A 3-day ceasefire between Israel and Palestinian groups has gone into effect as of 8 a.m. local time. It's not the first time Korea has seen bullying in the army, but this case definitely crossed the line. The government will expand an investigation into the killing of an army conscript who died after being punched in the chest by his superiors. President Park Geun-hye says everybody involved in the case will be thoroughly questioned and punished. Yoo Li-an reports.
Speaking about the 23-year-old young soldier who was bullied to death back in April, President Park Geun-hye vowed a thorough investigation and punishment for those found responsible. The comments came during a cabinet meeting Tuesday morning, a day after Defense Minister Han Min-koo apologized to the nation over the failure to prevent such an incident from occurring.
It's a military commander's basic responsibility to send enlisted men back to their parents safe and sound. We feel a great burden over this incident.
The 23-year-old Yoon was bullied severely by his comrades back in April when he was forced to hold a horse-riding stance until the early hours of the morning and told to lick spit off the ground. He choked to death after being hit in the chest by 5 of his comrades. The army announced it will consider pressing murder charges against the 5 soldiers if found responsible for the young soldier's death. It's the latest in a series of similar incidents in recent months, and public distrust in the military is growing. An army sergeant who had been bullied by his comrades went on a shooting rampage back in June, killing 5.
When my son goes to the army, I'm going to check his body whenever I visit to see if he has been physically abused. I'm worried he may have to go through the same thing and be forced to hide it.
Harsh military practices and a distorted rank-based culture which seniors can use to abuse junior enlisted soldiers has long been prevalent in the military. To maintain a strong defense against North Korea, all South Korean men are mandated to serve in the military. But the recurrence of abuse-led deaths has the nation deeply worried about the safety of their sons. Yoo Li-an, ARIRANG News.
And now on to the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. 2 American missionary workers who contracted the virus while helping victims in the area are said to be recovering well, thanks in part to an experimental drug. Here's our Shin Se-min with the latest.
The 2 American missionary workers infected with the Ebola virus might have been saved by an experimental drug. After receiving the so-called ZMapp serum, Dr. Kent Brantley and Nancy Reipel reportedly began improving within just a couple of hours. Developed by San Diego-based Mab Biopharmaceutical, this serum had never been tested in humans before, only in monkeys who survived the virus when given the serum within 48 hours of infection. As there's no proven treatment and no vaccine for the disease, any sign of possible cure is garnering attention. The current outbreak is the largest recorded in history, and it's spreading fast. The director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the outbreak is currently out of control. And at the outset, it's extremely difficult to detect whether someone has been infected, as Ebola begins with symptoms similar to the common cold. But within days, the patient will begin to experience chronic abdominal pain, bleeding eyes, vomiting, and diarrhea, along with deadly organ failure, eventually resulting in death within just a couple of weeks. However, as it's difficult to detect the virus at the early stage, there's an increased risk of transmission. Ebola can kill up to 90% of those infected, although in the current outbreak, the death rate stands at 55%. This latest outbreak was the first detected in Guinea in February and has since expanded to Sierra Leone, Liberia, and even to Nigeria. West African states especially lack the resources to fight Ebola, and deep cultural suspicions about the virus make it more difficult to put the brakes on its spread. The World Health Organization announced Monday that the current death toll has topped 880, triple the number of fatalities recorded during any other outbreaks. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
For the past 10 years, Japan's white paper has claimed sovereignty over Korea-controlled Dokdo Island in the East Sea, and this year is no different. The latest was submitted by its defense ministry to the cabinet on Tuesday, indicating the island as its territory. The Korean government was quick to respond. Seoul said it cannot accept Japan's actions and urged Tokyo to withdraw the claims and refrain from such activities in the future, saying such moves will not help improve bilateral ties. It added Korea's sovereignty over the island can be proven historically, geographically, and internationally. Now, another monument dedicated to women forced into sexual slavery in the early 20th century has been made public in Union City, New Jersey. In the U.S., it's the 7th such memorial there, but this one is somewhat different from the rest. ARIRANG's Kwon So-ah explains.
This iron butterfly has been established to remember the hundreds of thousands of women who were forced into sexual slavery before and during the Second World War by the Japanese military. Honoring the so-called comfort women from Korea, China, Taiwan, the Philippines, the Netherlands, and Indonesia, the monument was unveiled at Liberty Plaza in Union City, New Jersey on Monday. It is the 7th such monument in the United States honoring the sexual slavery victims, but this one is a bit different in that it's the first time a local government took the initiative in creating it. Korean communities had taken the lead in other projects throughout the U.S.
This is about human rights and it's about education. Educating our youth about what took place in the past so we don't make the same mistakes again.
2 surviving Korean comfort women took part in the emotional ceremony that welcomed some 400 people.
We thank the American and Korean people who have come here, and although we don't have much time left, we will live the rest of our lives with strength.
The monument is meant to remember the victims and raise awareness of Japan's atrocities, but as Union City Commissioner Lucio Fernandez says, it's about more than that. It's also about a general message of peace and the protection of women today throughout the world from kidnapping and sex crimes. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
And the 2 former sex slaves currently touring the U.S. Aren't just attending memorial events, they're also holding talks with high-level U.S. officials. Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reports that Lee Ok-sun and Kang Il-chul met with representatives of the White House and State Department last Monday and Tuesday. Details have not been released about who was at the meetings or what was discussed, but it is raising speculation about the future policy direction in the U.S. over the sexual slavery issue. Last week's talks were the first in which the White House and State Department held meetings with former sex slaves on back-to-back days. Japan and China are said to be trying to arrange a meeting of their leaders during an upcoming APEC forum in Beijing. Various Japanese media outlets are reporting that former Japanese Prime Minister Yasuo Fukuda held a secret meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping late last month and delivered the current Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's call for talks on the sidelines of the November forum. The Chinese leader reportedly expressed a will to take positive steps to mending relations strained from historical and territorial disputes. China-Japan relations have dipped to their lowest point in years due to disputes over remote islands in the East China Sea and Abe's visit to a controversial war shrine which China sees as a symbol of Japan's past imperialism. In the year 2012, for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Na Hyung-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Now, following last month's by-election defeat, Korea's main opposition party has been left without a leader and is not likely to have one until next year's party convention. For the time being, the party's interim leader Park Geun-hye held a press conference today. Our National Assembly correspondent Ji Myung-gil reports.
Park Geun-hye, who is serving as both the floor leader of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy and the interim chief of its emergency committee, has been tasked with rebuilding and reforming the party. The committee will carry out a set of reforms until a new leadership is selected early next year.
Our party will select members for the emergency committee from both inside and out of the party. The public can also make recommendations through my Twitter, Facebook, or our party's website.
The committee will function as the main opposition's executive branch until a party convention next year, sometime before March. Their officials will pick the party's new chairman, secretary general, and other senior executives. In her new role, Park, a three-term lawmaker, is faced with the arduous task of finding a way to unify different factions within the party. The pro-Nomuyeon arm once held the lion's share of power, but was weakened following the defeat of former presidential hopeful Moon Jae-in, a key pro-No figure in the 2012 presidential election. Pundits say that the pro-No faction is now likely to make a comeback. The main opposition party has been in a state of turmoil since its defeat in last week's parliamentary by-elections. The party won just 4 of the 15 parliamentary seats are for grabs, prompting party co-leaders Kim Han-gil and An Chol-soo to step down to take responsibility. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
And to the ongoing conflict in Gaza, another ceasefire has been called by Israel and Hamas. This 72-hour truce proposed by Egypt has started Tuesday, 8 a.m. local time. The question is, though, will it hold? Connie Lee has more.
It's a 3-day ceasefire on the Gaza Strip starting Tuesday. After nearly a month of fighting and multiple broken truces, Israel and Palestinian groups, including Hamas and Islamic Jihad, have agreed to a 72-hour ceasefire proposed by Egypt.
Hamas informed the Egyptians that it agrees to the 72-hour truce. The Israeli occupation forces should withdraw outside the border.
With previous truces falling through, often within a matter of hours, there's understandable concern about whether this one will last.
Israel will honor the ceasefire as agreed to and negotiated through the Egyptians. We'll be watching Hamas very closely. If Hamas violates this ceasefire, so Israel is prepared to respond.
To negotiate a longer-term deal, Israel and Palestinian groups also agreed to attend talks in Cairo with Egyptian mediators. The ceasefire deal comes after Israel's declaration of a 7-hour pause in the fighting on Monday. However, Palestinians accused Israel of breaking its own truce. Gaza's health ministry says Israel fired missiles at a house in a refugee camp in northern Gaza, killing at least 3 people, including an 80-year-old child. Israel says several rockets were fired from Gaza during that truce.
This operation is really taxing my soul. It's making me lose my humanity. I consider myself a liberal, but it's hard to stay very liberal when people are raining rockets on you every day.
More than 1,800 people, overwhelmingly Palestinian civilians, have been killed and nearly 2 million people displaced since the fighting started 4 weeks ago. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And rescue efforts are still very much underway in the Yunnan province of China, where a powerful quake struck the region on Sunday. 32 people have been freed from the piles of rubble, including a 5-year-old boy that came out alive. Tens of thousands of emergency personnel are working against the elements to search for more survivors. The brunt of the damage was felt in Yoo Li-an County, where more than 400 people are feared dead. 12,000 homes also collapsed in the quake. Now, rescue remains the primary mission, as instructed by Chinese Premier Li Keqiang when he toured the disaster site on Monday. Beijing has allocated some $97 million for the relief mission as the China Earthquake Administration placed its response level at its highest on Monday. Hundreds of aftershocks were recorded in the region as heavy rain and thunderstorms are forecast for days. For the Korean economy to reach its growth potential, more women are needed in the workplace. That's the joint conclusion reached in a new study conducted by the International Monetary Fund and the Bank of Korea. The nation's economic participation rate for women stood at 55.6% last year, 22 percentage points lower than their male counterparts. The study says policy reforms such as tax benefits and child care subsidies could narrow the gap to at least 15 percentage points. It adds the expansion of the labor force due to having more women in the workplace would cancel out the negative effects of Korea's rapidly aging population. Korea's foreign exchange reserves hit another record high in July, making it the 13th record-breaking month on the rise. The nation's central bank said Tuesday that reserves swelled to $368 billion as of the end of last month, up almost $1.5 billion from June. The Bank of Korea attributes the increase to a rise in investment profits. Korea has the seventh largest foreign reserves in the world, following China, Japan, and Switzerland, among others. Now, Kakao, which dominates Korea's messenger application market, is aiming to expand into various businesses from e-commerce to a mobile call taxi service. The move comes as the company searches for its next growth engine. Hwang Ji-hye has more.
With its nationwide user base, Korea's largest mobile messenger app, Kakao, is striving to break into new businesses. In order to provide an online credit card payment service starting next month, Kakao has already reached partnerships with 9 credit card companies, including Shinhan Card and KB Kookmin Card. The service will allow users to make easier payments when they purchase goods on online shopping malls, just like PayPal. It's not the only e-commerce business that Kakao is trying to dive into. Another service dubbed Bank Wallet Kakao will allow users to transfer up to almost $100 a day to other Kakao users. The service is set to be introduced in September in conjunction with 15 local commercial banks. Kakao is also pondering whether to enter the call taxi service market. The service will assign the nearest taxis to users and also let them pay their fare with its e-wallet service. Experts say the plans show Kakao's aspiration to grow as an information and lifestyle service platform. It also points to Kakao's efforts to diversify its profits. Currently, Kakao's sales are heavily dependent on its Kakao game service that combines online mobile gaming with its free instant messaging app. Almost 80% of the company's sales came from the service last year. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Now, a movie about a sea battle that occurred more than 400 years ago is taking the Korean box office by storm. Roaring Currents has been breaking records since its release late last month, and the success has spawned fresh interest in the movie's main character, one of Korea's most revered heroes, Admiral Lee Sun-shin. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Since its opening on July 30th, the period blockbuster Roaring Currents, known in Korea as Myeongnang, has been setting new box office records by the day. Following the nation's largest ever opening of 680,000 viewers, the movie became the fastest film to sell 3 million tickets just 4 days after its release. It also attracted more than 1.2 million moviegoers this past Saturday, which happens to be the largest single-day total in Korean film history.
I heard the movie has been attracting a record of viewers, so I came to watch it with my mom.
Movie critics believe the film's popularity stems not only from its high cinematic quality, but also from a desire to witness leadership at its highest level. The film depicts the historic Battle of Myeongnang during the Japanese invasion of Korea in 1592. Admiral Lee Sun-shin, with just 12 vessels under his command, managed to fend off and destroy a Japanese fleet of more than 330 ships. The movie's success has spilled into Korean bookstores as well. A novel that shares the same name as the movie is a top seller, and other books on the Japanese invasion of Korea are being picked up again. Author Kim Hoon's Song of a Sword, or Karenore, has enjoyed a fresh wave of interest.
I think the recent trend represents the people's desire for a role model, someone we can learn strong leadership and strategy from.
The record-breaking film is set to sail into U.S. theaters on August 15th, which is Korea's Liberation Day, under the title The Admiral. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Earlier this year, Namsan Fortress was declared a UNESCO Cultural Heritage Site, and a recent discovery suggests there may be another site to be added to that list. Our Im Hyun-hee joins me today for another analysis. Thank you, Hyun-hee, for being here. So which site are we talking about here?
Right, so today we're going to be looking at the Bukhansansong Fortress. Now this is actually the fortress of the mountain north of the river Han, and so they actually made a new discovery there, which is sparking some more interest. Take a look.
Designated as a historical site number 162, the Bukhansansong Fortress sits to the north of Seoul and is a popular site for many locals and tourists alike. The fortress within was built in 132 during the Baekje Kingdom. But recently, within the fortress, something new has been uncovered: the discovery of a very different set of rocks. Rocks of different size, shape, and even color have been found, suggesting a different past for the fortress, as well as a different future.
Records of the Junghoon-sansong Fortress were found in the Bukhansan Mountains during the Goryeo dynasty, but until now it was only in the documentation. We can now say the true nature of it has come to light.
The Bukhansan Mountains were designated a historical site in 1983, but recently the discovery of the difference within the fortress has led researchers to put more value on the fortress itself. The discrepancy suggests that a certain part of the Bukhansansong Fortress is actually from the Junghoon-sansong Fortress and dates back to the Goryeo dynasty. Bukhansan mountain peaks are characteristic of beautiful granite composition, but these rocks contain a much different composition, revealing it was brought in and used to build the Junghoon Fortress, a location pivotal to the protection of the kingdom hundreds of years ago.
From the Goryeo dynasty to the Joseon dynasty, this region played a big role in defending the kingdom. The historical importance of the fortress is now distinct.
Because of the new finding, Bukhansansong Fortress shows an important transition between different periods in time and in history. So far, there are 9 cultural sites on the UNESCO Cultural Heritage List in Korea, with hopes of adding one more.
So, I mean, it looks like certainly good news, but we'll still have to wait and see how this unfolds. But for our viewers who are not really familiar with the process, how does a site become an official UNESCO heritage site?
Right, so there are some criteria to be met before you're considered eligible. There are 6 cultural and 4 natural criteria that include anything from being representative of a masterpiece of human genius, or even something that's a unique testimony of, cultural tradition or, a tribe. And so there are many, things to take into consideration. But overall, it really has to be something that represents something, part of cultural heritage that, really needs to be preserved for the future.
So what were those fortresses being used for in the past, apart from keeping our enemies far away?
Right, so they served many purposes. Obviously, it was very pivotal and very, useful when it came to battles, and very strategic in that sense. But actually, they were also used by the various kings as a secure location in the case of, a retreat if it was needed, in case the palace was overrun. But it's interesting, actually, the Junghoon-sansong Fortress was actually used during the Japanese invasion of Korea as a training site for Korean soldiers, but also as a battle site as well.
All right, so we'll certainly keep a close eye on how this develops. And thank you, Hyun-hee, for joining me and talking about this interesting issue today.
Always a pleasure.
Good afternoon. The most part of the regions will have hotter and sunnier day with heat wave advisory in effect in some regions down south with a chance of spotty showers, but it's cloudy right now here in Seoul. And the discomfort index will rise as we head into a midday, and by 3 this afternoon, people in the entire nation should feel very uncomfortable. So let's take it easy today. And with that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul and Daegu will rise to 32, while Gwangju and Busan will reach at 30 this afternoon. And for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 31, and Dokdo should see a high of 29 this afternoon. Well, the super typhoon Halong is approaching, and it's likely to threaten the western portions of the Japanese mainland and or South Korea. It will trigger massive rainfalls and gust of wind, which is strong enough to overturn cars and remove trees from the roots. So do keep up to date on the typhoon's path. Well, that's all for me today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
All right, thank you, Jiyeon, for those updates. That's all I have for you for now. I'll be back with more updates at 4 p.m. Korea time.